This podcast is brought to you by Train Retail. Frankly, it's the most affordable and most effective method of training with a 10-minute video every week for your team to watch, discuss, and grow. Jewelers have told me they love this program because it constantly involves their team in group talk, and that edifies and supports really the best sales practices for professionals. Give it a try, absolutely free, by going to trainretail.com and use coupon code FREEMONTH. That's free month. It's all one word and all lowercase. Then after you like it, it's as affordable as $99 a month. Imagine bringing your team through a complete sales curriculum every single year. Talk about growth. Give it a whirl at trainretail.com. No commitments, and you can cancel anytime. But just imagine what your sales team could achieve by learning just one great principle. Give it a try. Trainretail.com. We're in episode 4 of the Business of Jewelry podcast with Jimmy DeGroot, myself, and Peter Smith from the Retail Smiths.
Hello,
Welcome,
Jimmy.
Peter.
It's nice to be back again. Jimmy, feels like it's been a long time since I've seen you, but it probably hasn't been that long.
We knock these out in between gigs.
That's right.
And
we knock
before
these
we
out
talk
in between making a living.
Yeah, exactly.
There's that.
Exactly. Hey, let's have I got some news, unhappy news we got this week here.
Yeah. We should acknowledge, the passing of Hedda Schupak, the former editor-in-chief of JCK, and she was head of content for Centurion for a while, but really, really tough news in recent days. She passed away of cancer at 62 years of age. I know Sherry had a long conversation with her at Centurion, which doesn't seem like it was that long ago, and just very, very sad. Goodness. So my thoughts to her family and all of the folks in the industry who knew and loved Hedda. She was a stalwart, and so
I remember Hedda from 1996 when I got into the jewelry business, and you just go into the break room, you grab your cup of coffee or having your lunch, and you're reading something that Hedda has written.
Yeah, so, it's very sad, very sad. So
she has definitely been around a long time.
Rest in peace.
Yeah. So you and I are spending some time this fall on the road. What you been doing this week?
Since we love music so much, I feel like I should jump right into Willie Nelson's "On the Road Again." I just can't wait to get on. So last week I had you should have done that actually, Jimmy. You should have played a little "On the Road Again," which is
I don't know if that's licensed. I don't know if I can do that.
But you'll do what you did for the theme song. You just rip off something else, but change something ever so slightly to be legally.
I can do it.
Although George Harrison tried that once and it didn't work out so well, or at least he was accused of trying "My Sweet Lord" and "He's So Fine," the chiffon song against George Harrison's. That ended up in court. So it was
Huey Lewis in the News and Ghostbusters.
I didn't know that. I didn't know.
Parker Jr.
Oh, man. And as you know, I spend a ton of time on the road.
You've got to be in front of people.
Absolutely.
And that's a beautiful thing.
I said it, and I make no apologies. Yep. And I think it's in my next draft for National Jeweler. I breathe the oxygen in the retail stores because that's what keeps me going.
Well, I'm going to breathe some oxygen too, and I'm going to continue the Jimmy and Peter Fall Tour of the South.
Nice.
Next week. I'm headed up to the Northwest.
Say that fast 3 times, why don't you?
I'm headed up to the Northwest Arkansas AGS
that's
Guild.
Great. That's really good.
Northwest Arkansas AGS Guild, and I'm going to be giving a talk there about some last minute outreach or clienteling for fall. I've created a program because there isn't a program or a book written out there about clienteling or outreach. And I've created a program, instituted it in some music stores here in Wisconsin.
Nice.
And in some jewelry stores. I found a couple little glitches.
Yeah.
What are the stops? Those, by the way, I do mention in my YouTube video. If you're not subscribed to Jimmy DeGroot's, which is mine, YouTube channel, just Google me, go on YouTube. I'm giving everybody a free, absolutely free training session on outreach and clienteling. So check that out. I just put that out. It's going to be, I think they're going to put it in In-Store magazine as well. So
Jimmy, as a public service, can people find the Jimmy and Peter podcasts.
The Jimmy and Peter
also on that channel.
That's also on that channel too.
Nice.
So yep. And people do need to subscribe to it, folks, if you want to get regular notifications of these. Anyway, so I'm going there. I'm excited about that, and I'm starting to follow you a little bit here in terms of get the heck out of the office here, the studio, get out from behind that camera and go breathe that air. So
you always get great ideas, right? So there's no way you go out to these environments if you're engaging with salespeople and you're not coming away.
Grow.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
It's absolutely. It's almost like free learning, right? It's almost free learning.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of free learning, I didn't get the book from Alexander Chernev, Customer Science, but you sent me over beautiful 7 pages of notes, and I dig this stuff so much.
Right.
This podcast would be literally 6 hours long if we talked about all of these things. But let's jump into a few of these because this is some really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So,
we probably should tell people who he is first, right? So that
all right, sure, go.
So Alexander, I don't know his official title because they're always professor of something, but he is basically, if there is such a thing, the lead professor of psychology at the Kellogg School of Marketing at Northwestern. And the one that we're talking about now, that you're talking about, is the one on consumer science, right? I don't have the name of the book at hand, but I think it's
Customer Science. Alexander Chernev.
Yeah. Yep. So fantastic stuff. Yeah. So let's jump into it.
Well, I've done some training with Roy Williams back in the day, as we say, and Roy Williams talks a lot about one of these first exciting things, and that's our system of thinking or our system of decision making. He talks about the fast thinking system, which is our subconscious, and then the slow thinking system, which actually means when we say we're going to think about it, that's what the slow system is. It's actually purposeful thinking and deliberate thinking. Yeah. The thing that I learned about the gateway between decision making, whether it's subconscious or conscious, is that there's Broca's area of the brain. And Broca's area is in this part of the brain that he's talking about, which is actually the doorway that lets interesting message or relevant messages through. For example, he's talking about, if we're not in the market for a stove and microwave right now, we're typically not going to see those messages, especially if those messages sound like everything else. We're talking about service, quality, value, blah, blah, blah. Who gives a crap? But if we're relevant, and we're relevant to people whether they're in the market or not. I'm sorry, I'm taking this over from you.
No, do it. This is a good topic.
But if we're relevant to people whether they're in the market or not, meaning our message is relevant to them or hits home with them, that sticks in that subconscious, and the door automatically opens as soon as they're in the market for it, whether they see your advertising or not. Yeah. Meaning, if you've made an impact on them, when the door opens, it's going to be you they choose.
Yeah. There's, the beautiful thing about consumer psychology and the idea that one was named customer science. It was almost like reductive to the point of being beautiful, right? Because there was no way to sort of misinterpret what the whole thing was about. Is each door that you open leads to 3 more doors, and then you open those 3 doors and it lead to 9 doors, and it's the best kind of rabbit hole, because the deeper you go into it, the more you learn. And to me, it's been one of the great joys of my life, really, for the last couple of decades, is this understanding and continued learning on consumer science. What I don't recall whether he cited him, although I would be willing to bet a bunch of money that he did. But the whole sort of thinking fast and slow concept really came from Daniel Kahneman, the psychologist Daniel Kahneman, who wrote the book Thinking Fast and Slow, and was good enough to where it won the Nobel Prize for Literature. I mean, it was, for correction, I believe it was the Nobel Prize for Economics is what that book was about. And if I can just sort of start by addressing, broadly speaking, what System 1 and System 2 is, it sets up, I think, the rest of the conversation beautifully, because it's so central to our business. It is so fundamentally central to the jewelry business. And so what Kahneman says and what Chernev writes about, in fact, I think even as a list in there, is System 2. Let's start with System 2. System 2 is really about complex decisions. It's really about the stuff we're conscious of, right? That we're cognizant of it.
Purposeful.
Yeah, accuracy matters, and it's a big effort, and it is very slow because there's process and there's checks and balances. That's System 2. You and I see it more often than not with people who believe that the customer is better for hearing more product information than not. Right? Without getting into sort of getting too off topic here, I've seen so much evidence to support the idea that customers are not making decisions about buying luxury product in System 2. Right? Period. Now, that might not be...
They think they are.
They think except what they do is they make it on System 1, but they rationalize it afterwards, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I bought this Rolex watch because... Now, look, we're not talking about rocket ships, and we're not talking about, you know, very, very, very complex sales. In that instance, of course, System 2 comes in. We're talking about stuff that's really emotional, and that's what System 1 is, right? Simple. System 1 honors the fact that our brain weighs 2 pounds, generally, and absorbs 20 to 30% of our body's energy. That's what System 1 is about. System 1 says, hey, brain, you keep figuring out food and safety.
And breathing.
And all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Digestion.
And then emotions down here will take care of this beautiful piece of jewelry. So System 1 is more automatic. It is simpler decisions. It is in our unconscious, right? We're not aware of it. It is largely effortless, right? Because I just make that decision. They tend to be fast. And of course it's error prone, right? There's going to be, sometimes we do things and like, that wasn't the best thing to do, and so on and so forth. But that's the difference between the two. System 1 is really how we exist in jewelry stores. When I say we, customers, how they exist in jewelry stores. And so the more we get into System 2, the more it is that we're going to invite brain freeze. It's brain freeze. Because
that's how people decide how to buy gas. System 2. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly, and that is huge, and we have to recognize that. I often train on features and benefits. Features are System 2 things. Benefits are actually System 1 things, and it's without realizing. It's that picturing the visualization. You talked about it in the training you just did for me, where you put a luxury piece on somebody, and all of a sudden we have ownership.
Right.
You know, there's ownership there. I don't want to put that on because I might not want to take it off.
So we probably should give a little context on that for the listeners, right? What that was in the context of what?
Well, I'm going to read this and tell me if this follows the context that you're thinking right now. And folks, this is unscripted. We have ideas of what we're going to talk about. I'm quoting from the book. When given unlabeled containers, consumers are rarely able to pick from their avowed favorite beer out of a lineup based on taste alone.
Yeah.
This is because an important part of experiencing a favorite brand of beer is knowing we're drinking our favorite brand.
You know, imagine
Does that follow line thinking you want to go into?
Well, I'll tell you what, the fact that a Wisconsin guy uses a beer example is just ridiculous. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So here's a great example of that I think most people can relate to. Pepsi used to set up these taste centers in shopping malls around the country. And you would have these blind taste. I think they might have done them on certain streets as well.
I did one myself. I participated in one.
Right.
But yeah, I was there.
So it was a blind taste test, right? And what so in other words, they stripped away all of the accoutrements of branding, and they had people taste 2 different samples, and one was Coke and one was Pepsi. And again, Pepsi won the taste test, right? And they tried to make great hay out of it. Hey, people actually prefer Pepsi. The problem was, once you put the labels back, once you put that red can out there, consumers reached for Coke. they kept buying Coke. And so if you think about this idea of our industry, and especially diamonds, right? That people don't want to buy branding. It's a generic diamond, and they're not interested in branding. Bullshit. I meant to say bless you, by the way. Bless you. That is completely bullshit, because that does matter. Putting the label on it does matter. Communicating to me that I can effortlessly, right, System 1 and System 2, reach for that can of Pepsi or Coke, or reach for that particular brand of diamond or timepiece or whatever it might be. That stuff really matters. It doesn't suit everybody to think it does, but it does.
Well, you get this when we're shoving it in front of somebody's face, and we're talking about how proud of it. You know, maybe not blatantly, but it inevitably comes up. You know, it's a Hearts on Fire.
Right.
It's a Rolex. It's a Cartier. Okay. So it does. It is important, and I love you calling BS on that, because it's really real.
I should have just. People will now, when their colleagues sneeze, they're going to go, bull. I know you have to do that, because I heard it on a podcast. Hi, this is Peter Smith of the Retail Smiths. If you're a supplier, brand, or manufacturer looking to grow your business in the U.S., let's talk. I've walked that walk over a 4 decades career in the jewelry business, and I can help you to reach your goals. If you're a retailer or supplier looking to inspire your sales team, I've got a sales masterclass you really need to experience. And finally, if you're looking for keynotes for upcoming meetings or events on the future of retail jewelry, on hiring, on great store managers, or on sales psychology, you can reach me at theretailsmiths@gmail.com or on LinkedIn. That's theretailsmiths@gmail.com or on LinkedIn. Look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, so talk a little bit about, he talks about habitual buying and how that's the
loyalty,
risk is minimized.
Yeah.
The loyalty.
You know, it's a fantastic book for so many reasons, and we're, to be fair, just picking a couple of the themes from it. But it was such an interesting discussion as he got into the idea of consumer loyalty. And he sort of broke it down into 2 different elements. One is called habitual loyalty, and the other is called psychological loyalty. And habitual loyalty is the stuff that we do without thinking. It is the gas station we go to close to home. It is the dry cleaner we default to. It is the bank that we go to. It's all of those things that we do without realizing it to lessen the cognitive burden. It's just habit. And until one of those businesses really lets us down, right? The bank starts to get difficult to deal with, or the gas station gets crazy expensive. Unless that happens to break the pattern, we continually default to that stuff, right? Psychological loyalty, however, is an entirely different animal. And psychological loyalty is more associated with things that are much more stress-inducing. We can get a whole lot more anxious about them. They tend to be, but not exclusively, but they tend to be bigger purchases. So it could be automobiles, and it most certainly is jewelry. And what he talks about is simply because they are much more stress-inducing, and I'll use the threshold both literally and metaphorically. So we occasionally talk about threshold resistance in jewelry stores, right? And that doesn't have to be just very high-end jewelry stores. That can be jewelry stores, period. Once a customer comes into the jewelry store and has made a purchase, that's a massive thing that has happened, because you've now broken this idea of threshold resistance. They're now over that, and you've made them a customer of yours. And that, for very high stress-inducing and anxiety sort of inducing purchases, you just made it much easier. So you now have psychological loyalty. So you've mentioned some brands already, and I think you could insert any number of other brands in that, whether it's Gabriel or Levion or Hearts on Fire or Memoir, Rolex, I mean, Omega, take any number of them. Once you become a member of that club, you now have psychological loyalty, and that's very, very powerful. And that's what branding does at its best. It's why people go and buy, if they're in the Lexus club, they're just buying Lexuses. If you're a rider of Harley Davidsons, you're in the Harley Davidson thing. That's psychological loyalty. It's very, very different than habitual loyalty. Habitual loyalty, to a large extent, is very low risk, right? Where psychological loyalty tends to be much more risk, much greater potential for risk in those purchases.
Yet the reward is so much greater for us as a business if we enjoy that and achieve that with a customer, because, well, of course, the buying cycle of jewelry and the long-term value of a customer is huge. As you were talking about this, I'm reminded of a study that was done by a prestigious university who I apologize, I can't remember, but I do have the graphics in front of me that I found on my computer. The old journey of customer loyalty, Peter, was the old journey back in the 70s and 80s was you build awareness through advertising. You see the advertising a lot, so you become familiar with it. Maybe a friend's got tied or whatever the product is. And then you talk to your friend, you have consideration, and then you make a purchase, and then, okay, that's my brand. I'm loyal now to that brand.
Right.
Because you've done a lot of work, and there's a new one that they call the loyalty loop. In that, there's evaluation, there's consideration, but then there's the moment of purchase. But you know what? The key, and people are sick of hearing me talk about this, but I'm talking about clienteling and outreach. If we remain relevant to our customer, who we've developed a relationship with, who's made that purchase, okay? If we remain relevant to them through outreach, not advertising, not group mass texts or group mass emails, but if we remain relevant to them, they're going to stay in what they're now calling the loyalty loop.
That's right.
It's not, you're locked in there. So Chernev is basically, validating this whole concept of tremendous loyalty from customers once you've got buy-in from them.
Yeah. There's another guy that I'm not sure if you read him or not. Perhaps some of the listeners do, but a guy called Doug Stevens. And Doug's a Canadian who is the retail prophet. He is one of these probably the preeminent retail futurist. But he, I suspect, a little agitatively compared shopping for luxury items like crack cocaine. He said you get such a massive dopamine rush when you do it, right? So we've got so many people who think, I'm putting the customer under duress by asking them to spend a whole bunch of money, or they'd really prefer me as a salesperson if I was able to save them some money and all this kind of stuff. And it sort of misses the whole point that, and I'll say this 1 billion times, I don't care, the single best definition of a satisfied customer is somebody who walks out that door thinking, man, I just love what I just bought. Not that
I love these people.
I love these people. It's not that I got a discount or I got a cheaper price, because in that instance, what you're actually signaling as they walk out is, could I have done better? Right? So it's more regret avoidance, which is another psychological theme. But in this case, when they spend the money, when you inspire them to do it, what they walk out with is this unbelievable sense of, having contributed to their identity project or their branding or their exclusiveness or their uniqueness. And I think that we should be thinking more about that kind of stuff, because it's powerful stuff.
Let's talk about how customers feel.
Yeah.
About the offering, about the jewelry that we're showing them, or how important that is. One of the questions that I always teach in my training is, well, actually the most important question I feel in sales that we need to ask for every sale is, what's important to you in a men's band? What's important to you in a timepiece? What's important to you? And until we find out what is really important to them, linking, of course, to their emotions, talk a little bit about emotion.
Well, I mean, I know because the weight of evidence supporting it is overwhelming, that luxury purchases are all about delivering emotional answers, not emotional answers, but emotional deliverables, really, right?
Right.
If I can connect with somebody on an emotional level, they are so less interested in even things like the price. And so how do we know that? So let's just talk about one of the things that...
Well, a perfect example is DeBeers has not been talking for the last 70, 80 years about the specific gravity of diamonds.
Yeah.
They haven't talked about that, have they?
Listen, for a slight digression, the $20 million, which is what I think I read they're going to spend, is exactly $20 million more than nothing. So that's really, really good. But it wouldn't buy you an ad in each of the 4 quarters of the Super Bowl, right? It literally would not buy you 4 Super Bowl ads. So for a $6 to $7 billion company, it would have been nice to see something, given the massive change. Yeah, I mean, like take your pick. But I was looking at LVMH's advertising spend recently, and LVMH, and of course they're just a ridiculously massive company, but LVMH spent last year $9.7 billion on advertising. $9.7 billion. Never. I look at Christian Dior. Dior last year spent over $7 billion on advertising. Now that's global spend. So if you even think about, half the luxury market is in the U.S. So we even said, okay, DeBeers, spend half of your stuff here in the fourth quarter and half somewhere else. $20 million just feels like it's not it's certainly not a rounding error for bigger companies. So I'm happy to see it. I think it's interesting that they're going back to Diamond is Forever and what have you campaign. It'll be interesting to see if that resonates with people. But again, it's $20 million more than nothing, but it's not. It's barely north of 3 Super Bowl ads. So I don't know that it's going to be a real game changer.
But I don't mind that. In fact, if I had a store today, which I don't, I do this for a living. If I had a store today, I would look upon really any ad out there that's creating awareness, that is connecting emotion with the product that I sell. Hey, you know what? Rising tide raises all ships, right? Floats all ships. So I think that's a good thing. And we had that same thing happen at Avenue Jewelers. We had another store, a couple of other stores in the downtown area, and we were kind of sad when they left, because now all of a sudden the awareness or that traffic, that jewelry traffic, lessened a little bit. Yep. So hey, just keep swimming in the pool. And the other thing too that's encouraging to me is that we're still talking about it. Okay, they're not doing a whole lot of Radio Shack ads anymore. But of course, I heard Radio Shack is actually coming back. So, and McDonald's is not stopping advertising, and neither is Chevy and Ford and Dodge. If the conversation's still happening, there's a lot of pie out there for everybody to take a slice of.
I think that you're 100% correct in that, number one. Number two, the way to make it work for independent jewelers such that you get more benefit from that, whatever, however you want to characterize their spend, is that you likewise spend against the same topic. So if you're taking a significant portion of your budget and you're spending it on diamonds, and you're able to connect that to the broader DeBeers message, now you get the benefit, of 1 + 1 = 3. If you're saying, well, okay, DeBeers can do the heavy lifting, theoretically, and I'll go spend on whatever other brands I want to spend on, then I think it lives in isolation and you don't get the benefit of it. So no matter where you are in the country, no matter how big or small your business is, if you could find a way to tap into that and amplify that by aligning your own advertising spend, then I think it really works better.
Well, a lot of it is in messaging, Peter. It's what are we saying? Right. Are we saying quality, service, value, discount? Blah. Don't, just throw in the towel.
Right.
Close now. But if we're saying things that are relevant to people, like our first conversation here today, if we're saying things that are relevant, that remain in the subconscious, that are awakened by new messaging, they will prefer in most cases, they will prefer to come to J. Gerard Jewelers here in Little Chute, Wisconsin.
Right.
They will prefer to do that versus, their guy or their gal in the jewelry business.
Yeah.
I could go on for days, so I'll
leave it with this, Jimmy, because I'm just noticing a quote from Whitney Johnson, who wrote an interesting book, Build an A-Team, and I think there's a comment in here.
Wait, do you have notes?
When you talk so much, I have to look up stuff.
I do the same when you're talking.
just to fill the time, Jimmy. I mean, I can't read a book, so I got. But this reminded me of the best of how this works. She says, this is Whitney Johnson, Build an A-Team. Customers have a reflexive preference for the tried and true, thus leading familiar brands to a compounding competitive advantage over time. Right. So in other words, if I know you. And I continually hear about you. You kind of started this thing off talking about this stuff.
Sorry.
We're going to be better for it. No, it makes sense. So I think most American jewelry consumers know DeBeers. They don't know the whole story, but they know basically that DeBeers is the diamond company, right? So if you've got this DeBeers ad running for natural diamonds, and then you're tapping into it yourself, I think now you get what Johnson just said there, the compounding advantage.
Absolutely.
Right.
Exponential.
So in other words, what are we saying? People go out and advertise diamonds this fourth quarter.
Go on advertising, but also stay relevant to people by connecting with them personally. So that you're their person when they have that need.
Right.
Well, here's the reality is, Peter, there's so many things we could talk about. This podcast could be 6 hours long. But if you're a geek about customer science, if you're a geek about what's in the brains of people, and you're really into that, get Alexander Chernev's book, Customer Science. I don't even have the book. I got 7 pages from Peter's notes, and I'm digging it.
Hey, Jimmy, maybe I could sell the notes, the Cliff Note version. If people don't want to spend the time to read the book, I'll make probably okay. Mr. Chernev or Professor Chernev would not be pleased.
The rules for today are. I'm not going to sum this all up because we talked about so many things I forgot. But the rules for today are subscribe to this podcast. So hit subscribe in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And subscribe to also my videos, which are going to help you. It's sort of the free version of my weekly jewelry store training program. And then, heck, Peter and I are going to be flying all around the country here this fall, so look for us.
So, Jimmy, can I just add a last couple of things, or buy us a drink or two? Is our Facebook page is a good place for people to engage. So if you're a Facebooker, we have a page called Jewelry, Our Purpose, Our Passion, which is a great, please join that, and it's a good forum.
And for you folks under 30, Facebook is a social media platform by which old people like Peter and I connect.
It's a good forum for suppliers and for retailers. And then connect with us on LinkedIn, and we're both active on LinkedIn, and that's always a good place too to see lots of the content, not just the podcasts or the training videos, but just sort of daily little reminders and whatnot. Yeah. And it's a great place to sort of engage and be active. So back to you, partner.
All right, let's close with your favorite Mike and the Mechanic song. What's your favorite Mike and the Mechanic song?
The Living Years. The Living Years is just phenomenal.
You need to go and decompress. Go take Sherry out for a glass of wine or a coffee or something.
I need to go open a window. I'm dying in here.
Go open a window.
See you, brother.
See you later.
Take it easy.
The Business of Jewelry podcast with Jimmy DeGroot and Peter Smith is produced by me, Jimmy DeGroot, right here in the Train Retail Studios. It's also brought to you by Train Retail, your weekly 10-minute sales training video course with over 500 videos for your team to watch and train every single week. It's also brought to you by the wonderful folks at In-Store Magazine. Go to instoremag.com for more details and subscribe. It's also brought to you by The Retail Smiths. Peter Smith, an amazing consultant for the industry, both for retailers and suppliers. The Retail Smiths. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll see you next time.